Hi, Mike from the Rural Montana family. Did you ever wonder why electric cars don't have solar on them? I mean, wouldn't that be cool? This could extend the range and it could charge without being plugged in. We got those nice glass roofs nowadays on most EVs, or many EVs anyway. Wouldn't it be better to have a solar roof? Solar in electric vehicles is not something new. It's been out there for a long time, several decades, at least 4 decades. In 1985, there was a thing called Tour de Sol that started in Switzerland, and those were electric vehicles. They were not really cars, they were electric vehicles. And they ran on solar. That was the idea, to prove that such a thing can exist as a solar-powered electric vehicle. Nowadays, I don't know, the most famous one may be the Aptera. That's going to be a solar-powered vehicle, at least to some degree. But there were others. The Nissan Leaf had a solar panel years ago, a decade ago already. That was a thing. They had a solar panel on the rear spoiler. There is a company called Sono, I believe a German company. They make a solar powered small car. And then Fisker also announced a solar roof on their cars. So why do some have something and others have nothing? Is it a good thing or is it a bad thing? Or does it not work? Well, looking at some of those EVs that, well, started with the Tour de Sol way back when, 40 years, more than 40 years ago, basically, things started like that. They haven't changed much. They have gotten a little bit smaller because solar panels have gotten a little bit more efficient. We can do better with weight and aerodynamics today than we could 40 years ago. So, but the looks of them, of these electric vehicles, did not really change over 40 years. They pretty much look the same, and they don't have a cabin like we have here in a car. They have a cockpit, an extremely small cockpit, because that's weight savings. Also, that affects aerodynamics. And usually this cockpit is designed around a driver. And the driver is usually a short person, very light person, because weight matters. So that's how these electric vehicles get going, with less weight, good aerodynamics, and the needed amount of solar. And there's different categories for these solar vehicles. Some of them have a little battery backup power, some don't. Some have pedal assist going with it. There's all kinds of different categories and things out there. There were even some made that can actually seat 5 people, but they still look awkward. And none of them can really help us with our daily driving, because a lot of us have to drive to work or come home from work in the dark. There's no sun, so solar doesn't do anything. So these things don't really work, so we have to have more of a car like this. Yeah, we can compromise a little bit. So like, let's say the Aptera is a good compromise. It seats 2 people. It has a decent room to store stuff in the trunk. And so for a daily driver, that is not bad, because it does have a battery. And you can order it with lots of solar, and they can say it goes 1,000 miles. I would say it does not go 1,000 miles unless you go 1,000 miles in a circle or follow the sun anyway. If you're going on a cross-country trip, you most likely will experience different weather, and elevation gains and things and so on, and it probably won't do 1,000 miles, solar or no solar. So if even an Aptera that is built extremely aerodynamic and extremely lightweight can't do it with the amount of solar, could a regular EV have a chance to do it with solar? So we talked about weight and aerodynamics, and most EVs today, electric cars, let's say, are they're okay with aerodynamics, but they're not great. And weight, oh my God, they're heavy. They're most of these EVs are heavier than a gas car. A comparable gas car is usually a bit lighter than an EV, or an electric car, I need to say, because EV could be a solar vehicle, right? So electric vehicles are in general heavier than gas cars. And that is a problem because weight reduces range. Weight is working against efficiency. So how much does a electric car use? How much electricity do we need to run an electric motor? I mean, you may have seen large homes that have like 20 solar panels outside and it powers the entire home, right? I mean, bang, 20 solar panels power an entire home. How much could it take to power a car? 3, 4 solar panels maybe? That's about it, right? Shouldn't it? Well, that is one of the big misconceptions. Homes actually don't use as much power as an electric car. An electric car uses more power than most homes. If you run your vacuum, let's say for 1 hour vacuuming your house, a vacuum is about 1,000 to 1,500 watts. So let's say you run that for an hour. That means you're using 1 to 1.5 kilowatt hours of electricity during that time. That is not very much. Not at all. And that is just running a vacuum. And as you know, the vacuum has a relatively small motor. An electric car has a much larger motor. So just cruising along, I mean, it totally depends on which electric car you're looking at and on all kinds of conditions. But we're using about 25, 30 kilowatts to propel a car, roughly. That is about what our Bolt used, maybe going 50 miles an hour, something like that. Like I said, there's tons of variables. So, but let's go with, we're using 25 kilowatts as we're going. If we could keep going at 50 miles an hour using 25 kilowatts for 1 hour, we will cover a distance of 50 miles and we would use 25 kilowatt hours. 25 kilowatt hours. So you could run your vacuum for 25 hours. That's what a electric car uses in 1 hour. And a 1 hour drive is not something unusual, and 50 miles an hour is not a very fast speed. If you're going 80 miles an hour, you will be using a lot. And so you could use way more than that. And so that's why most cars, electric vehicles, are limited on range at higher speeds. The Chevy Bolt that's rated at 259 miles can do about 150 miles at about 70, 75 with some elevation gain in it. It can do maybe 170 miles with some elevation loss going downhill. So high speeds are a killer, use a lot of electricity. And now we want to replenish that with solar. Well, how big are solar panels? How much room do they take up? And how efficient are solar panels? So this here is a 250 watt solar panel. You can see it's about as tall as I am, so about 5.5 feet. It's about 3 feet across, and this produces 250 watts. Now, do you remember the vacuum we talked about? Vacuum runs about 1000 watts. So we would need 4 of those to just run a vacuum. And we would need 4 of those that have 100% output during that time. Usually solar panels do not have 100% output because situations are never perfect. To get 100%, we need light falling in at a right angle onto the panel. So it has to be aimed perfectly at the sun in order to get those 250 watts out of this panel. For that matter, any panel is like that. If the sun is at a different angle and it falls in sharply, then it will not produce as much. And then you may have clouds. You may park your car in the shade, or you may park your car inside a parking structure, because especially when it's sunny out like today, your car is going to get extremely hot, and you don't want your car extremely hot, so you probably park it in the shade, which means you will not have sun falling onto this panel directly. There will be some light and it will produce something, but very little. It can't produce the 250 watts. And remember, we need 4 of those just to power a vacuum. And the car uses how much more? Do you remember? The car uses about 25 times as much. So if we need 4 of those panels to run the vacuum, we need 25 times 4. We need 100 of those panels to run an electric car. So now you could say, but Mike, we have a battery in the car. We don't need to power the car directly from the solar panels. That is correct. That's the cool thing with electric cars, that we have this battery pack. So yes, you're right, we do not need to power the car directly from it, but we need to be able to recharge the battery. So let's make some calculations there and see how much it would take to recharge a battery. So one of the things we need to know is how much room do we have on the car to put solar where it makes sense. I know, like Sono puts them on the doors, and there is light there, yes, and it will do something, but to really have optimal conditions, it probably goes on top, like the hood, the roof, maybe a trunk area. By the way, don't mind the dirty car. So we got a pretty large car here, and I say we got about 5 feet across. We got about 3 feet this way. Remember the solar panel? The solar panel will cover this entire hood right here. So this entire hood could bring about 250 watts. Now let's say we take some super high-tech stuff that is more efficient than these panels, more efficient per square inch than these panels. Let's say we can get 400 watts out of this. Let's make it extremely high. The cost of a panel or solar cells that we could place on here that would actually do that is extremely high. Just to say, I mean, this 250 watt panel up there, they're about $1 a watt roughly, so it's about 250 bucks for that. So let's say we have something that is more efficient, that covers this hood, would put out 400 watts, almost double, is probably about 3 times the price. But that's just how it is. We're not worried about the price. We're rich, right? So we can put about, let's say, 400 watt on here. In reality, we can fit about a 250 watt panel on here. Now let's look at the roof. So we can go a long ways here. Let's go the whole length. And I would say we got 8 feet. Let's go across here. We got 4 feet. So we got 4x8 going there. So let's say we could put 2 more of those solar panels up there. So we could put 3 total on this car, and this is a large car. And if we would assume that this gives here 400 watts, we probably could do another 800 watts back there, you know, so we got a total of 1200 watts available. So that's pretty much all we could place on here that is efficient without going on the sides. On the sides we would have a lot of loss. So top would be about what we're talking about. And like I said, we're assuming this is perfect conditions, even though this car obviously is a little roundy shape because it's got to be aerodynamic. And because of this, the sunlight will never fall in at a right angle on every cell. So obviously it won't be perfect. But let's just assume it's perfect, and we got 1.2 kilowatts of solar on this car. Okay, I had to bring my notes here. I did some calculations. And so we measured this car here, the Model S, which is large. Okay, it has a huge battery too. It's a 2013, so it's not very efficient. So I'm not really going to base the calculations on this one. I want to go a more average car that has a smaller battery, like the Chevy Bolt. The Chevy Bolt has roughly 66 kilowatt hour battery pack total. Varies a little bit on what you read, who you listen to. But so we base it on a 66 kilowatt hour battery pack. If we wanted to charge that battery with the solar that's on the car, which we said is 1.2 kilowatts max, and we assume everything is perfect here, okay? It's not in reality, but for this, we just assume everything's perfect. So we have 1.2 kilowatts of solar. That means in 1 hour, we have 1.2 kilowatt hours put out from that solar, and that 1.2 kilowatt hours is going into the battery pack. Okay, so with a 66 kilowatt hour battery pack, obviously I just divide that by 1.2, and that is 55 hours. So if I would have to fully charge the Chevy Bolt on 1.2 kilowatts, it would take 55 hours. And remember, the Chevy Bolt is not as big as this Model S, so I probably could not fit 1.2 kilowatts on there. We can always use more efficient cells, right? I mean, the space station, the International Space Station up there has extremely efficient cells. But holy moly, I mean, even if you're rich, you can't afford those. So even if we are rich and we have better cells, we already have this calculated here. 1.2 kilowatt is already a lot of solar for this area that we have here. And we're doing the assumption we have perfect output. Usually you don't charge from 0 to 100%, so that doesn't really matter, I guess. But commonly we go maybe from 20 to 80%, which leaves us about 60% of the battery capacity to use. And so 60% of the battery capacity would be 39.6 kilowatt hours that we could use. So how long would it take to charge that? So it's 39.6 kilowatt hours divided by 1.2 kilowatts equals 33 hours. 33 hours. That's more than a day. And well, hold on. A day has actually night in it, no sunshine. So if we looked at that in regards to sunshine hours, we look at about 4 days if we get just a little bit over 8 hours of sun every day. So 4 days, that would be most of your week probably that you need the car to go to work just to charge the 60%. And that is, again, all under best conditions. And now let's look at the miles we could drive. So looking at 4 miles per kilowatt hour, that's about what the Bolt gets under good conditions. Here for us, we averaged more like 2.9 throughout the whole year, because the winter time, there's not much sun and not much warmth around here, and it takes a lot of juice to heat. So, but let's give it again the positive, the best thing we can. So we're saying 4 miles per kilowatt hour. And so if we got 39.6 kilowatt hours times 4 miles, makes 158.4 miles. So the 60% will give us 158.4, again, under best circumstances. This is not what we usually got. This is about what you could get under good circumstances. Now, let's assume you're driving only about 10% of that a day. So if you're only driving 15.84 miles a day, so less than 16 miles a day, just a little bit more than 15 miles a day, which is not very much, but some people do actually. Many people drive very little to work and back. I worked with many people that lived within 5 miles of work. So they going to work and back is 10 miles. If they do a stop at the grocery store or whatever, something, they probably don't drive more than 15 miles a day during the regular work week without any special events of sorts, right? So that would apply to them. So now to get 15 miles recharged, obviously I need 10% of the time that it would take to get 158 miles, which would be 3.3 hours. That is not too bad. So now you could say for somebody that really literally only drives an extremely short distance to work, this could actually work. So, but why do automakers still not do that? Well, we have perfect calculations. We have perfect conditions here. Let's put it this way. First of all, we can't get that much solar on the Chevy Bolt. That's not possible. We measured the Model S, much larger. But then we take a Bolt, which is much smaller, and thus it's less weight and it's more efficient. We also gave the Bolt a boost for like where we live. Like I said, we do more than a mile less per kilowatt hour than what we have in the calculation here. So this may work somewhere where you have great conditions to drive most of the year, and you still need more than 3.3 hours because we have less solar. We probably have only about 2/3, so we probably maybe get 800 watts on the Bolt, if that. And it won't be putting out 800 watts every hour, so it's not going to put out 0.8 kilowatt hours in an hour because the sun is not shining at a 90-degree angle on those panels, because those panels are shaped like the car. And so we don't have that. Maybe we get 50% of that, let's say. So we get 400 watts, 0.4 kilowatts. So 1/3 of all this. So if you only get 1/3 of this, now you can see our charging times skyrocket. So I need way more time to charge. So even based on the same good efficiency of 4 miles per kilowatt hour, I probably need 9 to 10 hours of sunlight a day to even come close to recharge that. And well, do you have 9 to 10 hours of sunlight a day where you live every day throughout the entire year? Not many places do. Actually, hardly all places do, because there will be clouds at some point. Somewhere there will be rain. There's snowfall. So then, yeah, you probably would do great in Alaska in the summertime. But Alaska in the wintertime, you wouldn't. So if we're going down south further, closer to the equator, yeah, you get maybe closer to 12-12 between daylight and nighttime. But still, you don't have a great output, or early in the morning, you won't get much charge from those solar panels. Also later in the day, you probably won't get great output. You get the best during the few hours around noonish. And so it just makes it impossible to really recharge a car. The cost of it to make it efficient enough to get any good benefit from it is way too high. That is the biggest problem. Another thing, a lot of people don't like the looks. Obviously, you will see those solar cells on your car, and it doesn't really look cool, nice, whatever. It's not really pleasing to the eye. So even if we have a glass roof with solar cells on it, you can still see it from the top down. And if we only do the roof, well, again, we lose square footage, so we have less output again. And the cost of having that solar, you don't need just solar cells to put on. You also have to have a controller, because these solar cells, they will put out a voltage depending on how much sun falls into it. And we got to do something with that output of that voltage. We got to bring it up or bring it down. We got to control it. What if your battery is actually full? What if you just charge to 100% on your regular wall connector because you're going on a trip and now it's full, but now the sun's blasting? So now we got to get rid of that output, and basically what a controller does just do that. It pretty much depending on a controller, it may burn it up in resistors, or it may just cut the power flow off completely. But so we also need a controller. So we need relatively expensive, because expensive, these cells have to mold to the car. They still have to be extremely efficient. So they're expensive cells. Then we need a controller on top of that. That's another expense. We want to have an efficient controller, so that a controller probably adds another couple $100 to the whole thing. Then we need the software to be able to actually run all this and integrate it into the car. So from a cost standpoint, it is very prohibitive to have solar on a car. And if we look at how efficient it is and how much it can bring, it doesn't make any sense, really. A lot of people ask for it, and that is why somebody like Fisker does it, because it's a thing to advertise. They can say, we have a solar roof. They don't say our solar roof doesn't give you anything really, but we have one, right? They just say, we have a solar roof. That's what you ask for. And people that are not aware of this, they actually, first of all, they pay more for that car probably, because there will be probably $1,000, $2,000 extra cost involved per car to get this. And well, you, the consumer, will pay for it. And it doesn't bring you very much. I mean, if you would look at a return on investment, spending $2,000 of solar on the car that sits in the shade probably 90% of the time, you never get that return on investment, okay? You're at a loss no matter what. And if you're in a hot climate, you're going to park your car in the shade. And if you don't, guess what? It gets hot inside a car. 120 degrees is easily reached with just a little bit of sun. 160 degrees is not a problem inside a car. So what do? You turn your climate control on to bring the temperature down. And, well, you parked it in the sun. You got this nice charge from your solar panel. Perfect. Now you turn your AC compressor on that uses 1000 watts. So it uses 1 kilowatt hour every hour. It takes you about an hour to cool the car down because it's so extremely hot in there. So now you lost 1.6 kilowatts. it's 1.6 kilowatt hours. Sorry, you lost, basically are gone, just for cooling the car back down. It just doesn't make sense. It is not on a regular electric vehicle. It makes sense. Something like an Aptera that is more built altogether for it and is much smaller. There, we maybe get that return on investment somewhere. If you live in a climate, if you live in Denver, let's say, Denver gets like 360 days of sun every year. And it's not extremely hot. It gets relatively cold, but we don't have super extremes. And even if in the cold, your sun is out and your solar panels will work, and they work actually more efficient in the cold. That's another factor that we didn't even look at so far. As your car heats up on the inside, your solar cells up on the roof will heat up and they will be less efficient. So we have an even bigger loss there. So it's just a bad thing. But if you would live in Denver, you could do possibly relatively good because there's lots of sun, not extremely high temperatures in the summer. There's cold in the winter, but not extremes. So you could do relatively good. So maybe for Denver, something like that works. But yes, it does not make financial sense to put solar on a car at this point. That's why it is not there. If one would say, hey, why don't you put a small solar panel on like the Nissan Leaf had, just to charge the 12-volt battery, because 12-volt batteries seem to still be a problem. If you haven't watched my latest video, I'm going to put a link right up here. If it doesn't pop up on your screen, look down below in the description. But 12-volt batteries still have some issues, and maybe a small solar panel that can give a little trickle charge to that 12-volt battery would make sense. And the cost is very low on such a panel. It does also not need a controller. It would just need a diode in there, basically. Very simple stuff. And you know, that may be $50, maybe $100, probably more $50 in mass production in a car. And if you would have to pay $50 more, but your 12-volt battery lasts a few years longer and you possibly don't get stuck because you have that, that's probably worth it compared to several $1,000s. So what would you do with that money you saved now? Now you saved a couple $1,000s on your electric car that you have coming because you chose not to have solar panels on there. Well, I would suggest you look into solar for your home because that makes much more sense. And I will make a video on that and explain how solar on your home makes more sense. And I will explain how that works with charging your car at home with that solar as well. But yes, that is it for today. I'm sorry, but solar on a car does not make financial sense at all. You will never get your return on investment, not on a regular electric car. On a special car like an Aptera, yes, then we probably come closer. In any event, if you like this video, please give us a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed to our channel yet, please subscribe to our channel. Hit the notification bell so you don't miss out on any of our future videos. And also, I would like to say we are not a full-time YouTube channel. We do these videos on the side. We still work full-time jobs, and we would really appreciate your support if you subscribe to us, if you give us the thumbs up, if you share our videos with friends, family, or even the people you hate, anybody. Put those videos on your Facebook, Instagram, share them with everybody, just to help us grow and so we can get more people to learn about electric vehicles and sustainable transportation. Thank you for watching. Goodbye. Oh, and I forgot again, Hey, down below in the description, there's a link for our Redbubble store. Please go check out our Redbubble store. We got some cool designs there that we designed. We didn't purchase those. We made those ourselves. You can get t-shirts and other stuff. Please go check it out. This is another way to support us. Thank you so much. Goodbye.